Hi, I'm Griffin, and I have a very strong fascination with mundanity. I'm constantly seeking out the kind of information that few people deemed important enough to put any more than a passing thought into, enjoying when they were younger but quickly forgot once it fell out of popularity, or maybe heard of briefly, mentioned here or there, but never got around to looking deeper into it. The kind of stuff that you'd be hard-pressed to find and more than briefly mentioned, if at all, in a history book of any kind, simply because it was taken for granted, fell out of popularity, or was just deemed boring or unimportant at the time. The autobiography of a chicken farmer, the abandoned diary of a 60-year-old housewife, some home videos of a new family in the 90s, forgotten letters between family members, transcripts from old radio commercials, a cookbook from the 70s with 6 recipes for salami in a row, written by the workers of a long bought-out airline. I have thoroughly enjoyed all of them, and more. These snapshots of our everyday lives, things we don't see as important but influence us in some way nonetheless. The everyday person, the everyday way of life, the way we were and how that has evolved into the way we are. My goal is to explore the complexity and importance of the mundane and to shed some light on largely forgotten things from America's past. What was it like to go to school in the 1920s? What was grocery shopping like in the 40s? What did doing laundry look like at the turn of the 20th century? What's a telegram? Should we bring disco back? All these questions and many more are what I hope to address in what I'm calling the Decades Project. For each year of my real life, I will try to explore what it would be like to live as someone in a particular decade, starting at the dawn of the American century with 1900 to 1909. But that's easier said than done. How will I go about this? Well, first we have to recognize that somebody's life would be like is very different depending on who they are. Socioeconomic status, religion, race, gender, disability status, immigration status, location, family life, how one was raised, and many more factors all would have had an influence on somebody's experience with and views of their culture. This, in turn, determines how one interacts with and perceives their culture and what aspects they choose to participate in, how they go about that participation. Not only in what they are accustomed to and their personal preferences, but their ability to participate in the first place. To put my point simply, everyone will have a different experience with not only their culture, but popular culture at large due to many different aspects of their person and their personal history. There is no universal. The best I can do is live life how I, a Midwest lower middle class white man with massive autism coming from a German Catholic background, would have lived. A typical trend we see throughout post-Civil War American history, and to a large extent American history in general, is that any advancements, be that technological, political, economic, etc., come slower and often more gradually to the more rural South and West. We might have a picture in our minds that these are often socio-political in nature, and in the vast majority of cases, these changes are only a decade or two behind. In that our modern age, with our modern advancements, this delay in progress, especially on a technological scale, is becoming shorter and specific shortcomings less frequent to where it's largely non-existent. But despite our advancements, there are still areas that adhere to past practices and ways of life commonly thought as reserved to only the most extreme cases of religiosity, poverty, or both. Sometimes this looks like having a windmill on your roof specifically to charge a battery for your radio because your house doesn't have plumbing, let alone electricity. Such was the case of my real-world grandparents in the 1940s. Sometimes this looks like eating your first steak in your late teens because everything you ate up until then was what your parents grew or hunted, as was the case of my own mother in the late 80s. Sometimes this looks like spending 8 years of education in 4 rooms of a schoolhouse, but using smart boards and laptops, as was my case growing up in the late 2000s or early 2010s. That school is still operating the same way to this day. All this to say that while the cultural identity I am about to adopt might seem antiquated to some, even for the early 1900s, it is almost entirely based off the real life experiences of people in this area. For various reasons, all the way from impracticality to straight up impossibility, I cannot recreate the life someone like me would have lived in each decade. Some things, especially public events or showcases, simply don't exist anymore. I don't have the money to install a basement or a chimney, nor update my wardrobe every year. If I don't want my pipes to freeze in the winter, I have to use electricity. And while I will drastically cut back on my internet usage, I literally cannot live without it. Communicating with my colleagues, scheduling doctor's appointments, paying bills, so on and so forth. So some things I can recreate, some things I just can kind of recreate, and some things I'll just have to tell you about. But rest assured, if I can do without, I will do without. And if I can't, well, I'll make a good effort. For the next 12 years, 1900 to 2029, I will live this life. I will read the same books, watch the same movies, listen to the same music, eat the same foods, discuss the economy, talk about the political races and who I'd vote for, and try out different fads and trends, and go down many a rabbit hole. And while I'm no expert in any of those topics whatsoever, I do think everyone who goes on this journey with me will learn something. So today I end this video in the year 2024, and I will see you next time, January 1st, the dawn of the American century.